The morning mist still clung to the valleys as a lone warrior climbed the worn stone steps toward a mountain temple. His armor clattered with each stride, a harsh echo against the silence of dawn. This was no ordinary visitor, but a samurai of great renown, feared across the provinces for his mastery of the sword and the ferocity of his temper. His name was forgotten by history, for names mattered little in the face of what he was about to learn. The warrior's heart burned not only with pride, but with a yearning, an unspoken wish to understand what lay beyond the battles and victories that had defined his life. As he approached the temple, a breeze stirred the ancient pines, carrying with it the soft chime of a bell, and beneath one gnarled tree, he found the Zen master. The old teacher sat in meditation, motionless, except for the rise and fall of his breath, as steady as the mountain itself. The warrior, impatient despite the serenity of the scene, stamped his foot, his armored boot sending a shower of dust into the air. "Tell me," he demanded, his voice sharp as the blade at his side, "what is the nature of heaven and hell?" The master opened his eyes slowly, as if awakening from a deepened, dreamless sleep. His gaze met the warrior's, and in that moment saw straight through him. Then, without so much as a bow or gesture of respect, the master spoke. "You ask such a question," he said, voice low but clear, "and yet you stand before me a filthy, dishonorable creature. You reek of violence, your soul as soiled as your armor. A worm such as you should not waste my time with such foolishness." The words hit the samurai harder than any enemy's strike. His face flushed with rage, his hand flew to his sword, and in a single fluid motion, he drew it. The blade gleamed, cold and eager for blood, and he raised it high, ready to end this insult with a swift, fatal blow. But the master did not flinch. His eyes remained steady, his voice soft as a breeze. "And that," he said gently, "is hell." The sword froze in midair. The warrior's breath caught, his fury dissipating like mist under the morning sun. In that instant, he saw clearly. His own mind, clouded with anger, had forged the very hell he wished to escape. It was not a place to which he might go after death. It was here, now, in the hatred that consumed him, in the violence he was ready to unleash upon a harmless old man. The sword lowered slowly, the trembling hand returning it to its sheath. The warrior sank to his knees, overcome by shame and awakening. Tears traced paths down his weathered cheeks. He placed his palms together and bowed low, his heart open and humbled. The master smiled then, not in triumph, but in compassion, as a father might welcome home a lost child. His voice was soft, but it filled the space between them. "And that," he whispered, "is heaven." There was no magic in the words, no secret formula. The samurai had crossed the chasm from hell to heaven in a single breath, not through any change in his surroundings, but through the letting go of his own torment. Where a moment before stood hatred, now there was understanding. The blade of anger had fallen from his hand, and in its place, peace had entered. As the morning sun broke through the trees, casting golden light upon the temple stones, the warrior sat beside the master. Together they watched as the world awakened. The breeze rustled the pines, The bell rang again, and all was as it had been. But within the warrior, everything had changed. And so it is with all of us. How often do we forge our own hells from the fires of our anger, our greed, our fear? How easily we mistake the source of our suffering, believing it lies in the world around us, when in truth it is born in the mind's own attachments. The Buddha taught that hatred never ends through hatred, but only through love. This is the eternal law, simple and profound. The Master's harsh words were not cruelty, but a mirror. In them, the warrior saw the reflection of his own fury and found the path to release. Tonight, as you rest, consider this. Where does your own mind create suffering? In what moments do you draw your sword against the world, only to discover the true battle lies within? Can you, like the warrior, lay down the blade of anger and step into the heaven that is always here, waiting to be seen? The temple bells continues to ring softly in the distance. The master and the samurai sit in stillness, two figures on a mountain ledge, breathing the same air, sharing the same peace, and the world turns quietly beneath them. The temple path wound gently down toward the river, where willows dip their slender branches into the flowing water. The samurai, forever changed by his encounter with the master, had long since departed, leaving the temple grounds to their quiet rhythms. And yet, the lessons of that morning lingered like the soft scent of incense in the air, ready to touch the heart of another seeker. In the monastery beyond the river, disciples gathered at dawn for their daily rituals. They moved as one, their robes brushing the earth, their sandals whispering against stone. Among them walked a young monk, his face earnest, his eyes bright with longing. He had journeyed many miles to study at the feet of this renowned master, hoping that in this secluded place he would finally find the enlightenment that had eluded him. Each morning, he followed the master and the other monks to the riverbank, where they bathed in the cool, clear water. The river sang its endless song of impermanence as it slipped between the stones. The young disciple watched, hoping to glimpse in the ripples some secret of the Dharma. But no revelation came. On this morning, unable to contain the question that burned within him, he approached the master as they walked back toward the temple, their robes damp, their footsteps slow and mindful. The old teacher moved with the ease of one who had long ago surrendered to the flow of life. "Master," the disciple said, his voice trembling with hope and frustration, "what should I do to realize Zen? I have studied the texts, practiced meditation, and followed the forms, yet still enlightenment feels distant, as if I chase a shadow that always stays just beyond my grasp." The master paused, his gaze falling on a dog lying contentedly in the sun near the path. The animal's fur still glistened from its morning drink at the river. Its sides rose and fell in slow, peaceful rhythm. Occasionally, it flicked an ear at a buzzing fly or lifted its head to watch a butterfly dance past. But mostly, it simply rested present, untroubled. "Learn from that dog," the master said quietly, and walked on. The disciple stared after him, stunned. Was this a joke? A test? He felt his heart tighten with disappointment, his mind reel with protest. Had he traveled so far, labored so diligently, only to be told to take a dog as his teacher? His thoughts stormed within him, as noisy as the river in spring flood. "Master," he called, catching up, his voice strained to stay respectful. Though bitterness crept in, what can I possibly learn from a dog? I seek the highest wisdom, not lessons in animal behavior. The master did not answer. He merely kept walking, his stride unhurried, his mind undisturbed by the young man's agitation. Moments later, they passed another dog. This one was lean and ragged, busily gnawing at a scrap of bone it had scavenged from the roadside. Its tail wagged with simple satisfaction as it worked at its meager price. "Then learn from this dog," the master said, his tone as calm as before. Now the disciple's frustration broke through, his face flushed with anger, his fists clenched at his sides. "You mock me, Master. I came here seeking truth, not to be insulted. What can I gain from watching a creature that knows nothing of the path?" The master stopped at last and turned to him fully. His gaze was deep, compassionate, and unshaken. "You also eat and sleep," he said, voice as soft as moss beneath bare feet. And with that, he walked on, leaving the disciple alone on the path, the river's murmur filling the space between his thoughts. The disciple stood there for a long time, his anger cooling into confusion, and his confusion softening into reflection. He thought of the first dog, how it lay in the sun, without effort or striving, simply being. He remembered the second dog, how it met its hunger without shame or pride, accepting what the world offered without complaint. And he thought of himself, always chasing, always judging, always comparing, never resting in what was. His own hunger for enlightenment had become another form of clinging. In trying so hard to attain something special, he had overlooked the simple presence that was already his. As the day passed and the shadows lengthened across the temple gardens, the disciple sat beneath a tree and watched the dogs at play. No longer did he see them as beneath him. He saw them as teachers of the Dharma, embodying a wisdom beyond words. To eat when hungry, to rest when tired, to meet each moment fully without adding stories of success or failure. The Buddha said, 3 things cannot long be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And so it was that, as the sun set and painted the river with gold, the young monk glimpsed a truth he had sought in distant places, but found waiting beside him all along. Tonight, as you settle into rest, can you too meet your needs with a simple, accepting presence? Can you breathe, let go of striving, and be as the dog beside the river, content in the moment, free of the hunger for more? The path is not in chasing enlightenment, but in being awake to what already is. The river ran swollen with spring melt, its voice louder now, churning with the restless energy of the season. Along its banks, the fields lay freshly tilled, the scent of wet earth heavy in the air. In a shaded grove nearby, the Buddha and his monks rested after their simple midday meal, their bowls empty, their hearts content. The world seemed, in that moment, perfectly sufficient, but peace is often interrupted by the world's clinging, And so it was that a man burst upon their quiet gathering, a farmer, disheveled and breathless, his face pale beneath the sun's heat, his hands trembling with desperation. "Monks," he cried out before even bowing, "have you seen my cows? All 12 are gone vanished. Without them, I am ruined. Please, I beg you, have you seen them?" The Buddha lifted his gaze to the man's panicked face and saw not just the farmer's loss, but the chains of attachment that bound him. His eyes, clear as the river, reflected not judgment, but compassion. "What has happened, friend?" the Buddha asked gently, as if inviting the man to set down the weight of his sorrow for a moment. "They are lost," the farmer exclaimed, his words tumbling over one another. "Every cow I own wandered off at dawn, and my sesame crop eaten by pests this very season. Everything I worked for, everything I counted on, it's all gone. Without my cows, I am nothing. I have nothing left." The Buddha nodded slowly, understanding how the man's mind had fastened its peace to these fleeting things. "We have not seen your cows," he said calmly. "Perhaps they went in the other direction." The farmer bowed hastily, hope flickering in his eyes, and rushed off down the path, still calling for his lost animals. His voice grew faint as he disappeared into the trees, chasing after what was already gone. When the sound of his footfalls had faded, the Buddha turned to his monks, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. His gaze swept over these men who had given up possessions and positions, choosing instead the quiet riches of a bowl, a robe, and the present moment. "Dear friends," he said, his voice carrying like the breeze, "do you see? You are the happiest people on earth. You have no cows to lose." The monks sat in silence, the truth of their teacher's words settling over them like petals upon still water. In their simplicity, they had discovered a wealth that no loss could take away. That night, beneath the shelter of the trees, the Buddha spoke further. "We believe we need these cows, these possessions, titles, and securities. We think they are essential for our happiness, but they are often the very things that keep us from seeing the happiness that is already here." He paused, letting the sound of the river fill the space between his words. "Release your cows, and you will be free. Release your cows, and you will find a joy that cannot be stolen." How often do we cling to our own cows, the things, the roles, the identities we believe we cannot live without? We guard them, worry over them, suffer at the thought of losing them, and in doing so, we trade our peace for the illusion of security. The Buddha taught, you only lose what you cling to. The farmer's anguish was not the loss of his cows, but the loss of what he believed those cows meant: security, identity, future. The cows were never the source of his happiness, only the chains that kept him from seeing it. Consider your own life. What are the cows you guard so fiercely? Perhaps it is a position at work, a reputation, a possession, or a particular self-image. Imagine the energy you spend protecting, defending, or worrying about these things. What would it be like to let go not of responsibility or care, but of the tight grip of attachment? The monks that evening slept beneath the stars, free of such burdens. The loss of a cow, a crop, a title could not disturb their peace, for they owned nothing and so lost nothing. Their treasure lay in the open hand, not the clenched fist. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, can you loosen your hold on your own cows? Can you release, if only for this moment, the striving to protect what cannot truly protect you? Let your breath be your only possession. Let the present moment be your only wealth. As the Buddha taught, happiness, based on having, will always tremble with fear of loss. But happiness based on being is beyond all harm. And somewhere, out in the fields, the farmer's cows continue to wander, free of the sorrow their owner carried in his heart. The moon hung low over the mountains, its pale light tracing the outline of a modest hut at the edge of a forest. Inside, a fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls. Here lived Banzo, a master swordsman whose skill was legend, whose name inspired awe in warriors across the land. And to this humble dwelling came Matajuro Yagyu, a young man with eyes that burned with ambition. Matajuro bowed deeply, the weight of his father's rejection heavy upon him. Once heir to a great swordsman's legacy, he had been cast aside as unworthy. His pride stung, his heart ached, and desperation had driven him up the mountain path to Banzo's door. "Master," Matajuro said, his voice tight with longing, "I beg you to teach me. I will endure anything. Work night and day. How many years will it take me to master the sword?" Banzo regarded the young man for a long moment. His gaze was steady, like the mountain itself. "The rest of your life," he replied without hesitation. Matajuro's heart sank. He had hoped for a clear path, a timetable, a promise of mastery within reach. But, "Master, if I devote myself without pause, if I work harder than any student before me, how long then?" 10 years, perhaps, Banzo said, his voice calm, unmoved. 10 years. Matajuro cried, "My father grows old. I must prove myself before it is too late. What if I train with absolute intensity, without rest, without distraction?" Banzo's eyes softened, though his expression remained impassive. "In that case, 30 years. Matajuro's confusion deepened. First 10, now 30. How can that be? Banzo's face showed the faintest trace of a smile. A man in such a hurry seldom learns quickly. Matajuro fell silent. At last, humbled, he bowed his head. "Then I will stay as long as it takes." And so began Matajuro's training, not with sword in hand, but with broom and ladle. Banzo forbade him from even touching a blade. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. Matajuro swept the courtyard, tended the garden, cooked meals, and fetched water. Each task became his practice, though he did not yet see it. 3 years passed. Matajuro's heart sometimes filled with doubt. Had he come to serve or to learn the way of the sword? But he endured, trusting, though he did not understand. Then, one quiet morning, as he knelt to tend the fire, a blur of motion, a blow from behind, Matajuro cried out, caught unawares, as Banzo's wooden sword struck him. The next day, as he stirred the rice pot, another strike, swift and sure. From that moment on, Matajuro's training truly began. Without warning, at any hour, the master would attack. Matajuro learned to sense the subtlest shift in the air, the softest step upon the ground. His awareness sharpened. His mind grew quiet, present, alert. Each day became a dance of readiness. No longer could he afford a distraction. No longer could he afford to think of time, of mastery, of proving himself. There was only this moment, this breath, this possibility of the master's strike. As years passed, Matajuro's movements became fluid as water, his senses as keen as a wild animal's. At last, Banzo smiled openly. The training was complete, not because Matajuro had learned to wield the sword, but because he had learned to wield awareness. The Buddha taught, "Drop by, drop the water pot is filled." Matajuro's mastery came not from forcing the flow, but from allowing each drop of practice to shape him. His urgency had once been his greatest obstacle. His patience became his greatest strength. Consider how often in our own lives we seek to hurry wisdom, to grasp at mastery, to demand growth on our timeline. But the bamboo does not rush to grow. The river does not hurry to meet the sea. In stillness and persistence, we find the deepest learning. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, can you set down the urgency that tugs at your heart? Can you trust the slow unfolding of your path? Like Matajuro, let each simple act, each breath, each moment of awareness be your training. In this way, the blade of wisdom is sharpened, not through haste, but through presence. And somewhere in the mountains, the faint sound of wooden swords meeting still echoes teacher and student, now one in the way of the sword and the way of life. Night had fallen over the village, its narrow streets quiet beneath a silvered sky. But within one small house, a man tossed and turned, his sleep disturbed by shadows of the past. He had once loved deeply, truly. His wife had been the center of his world, her voice the song that guided his days. And then death had come, soft-footed and inevitable, stealing her from his arms. In her final moments, she had gripped his hand with surprising strength, her eyes bright, even as the light within them began to fade. "Promise me," she had whispered, her voice thin as silk, "that you will never love another. If you do, I will return as a ghost, and I will haunt you, bring you endless sorrow." The man had wept, his heart breaking, and sworn the vow she demanded. For a time, his grief was a kind of faithfulness. Each day, he visited her grave, spoke to her portrait, and kept his loneliness like a shrine. But grief, though it honors love, does not nourish life. Slowly, quietly, he began to notice the world again, the laughter of children, the warmth of the sun, the kindness of neighbors. And then, one day, he met a woman who brought laughter back to his lips. He tried to resist, torn between memory and hope. But the heart seeks company, and so he found himself drawn toward love again. When at last they became engaged, he dared to believe that even his late wife might, in her deepest compassion, wish him happiness. But that night, as the moon climbed high, his peace was shattered. A cold presence filled the room, and there she was, his wife, or the shadow of her, pale and trembling with rage. "You promised," she wailed, her voice like wind through dead branches. You swore you would never love another, and yet you betray me so soon. Night after night, she came to him. She spoke with terrible precision of the gifts he gave his betrothed, of the words they exchanged, of moments he thought private and tender. She knew everything, or so it seemed, every secret, every thought, every dream, and the man's health began to fail, worn down by fear, by guilt, by sleepless nights. At last, desperate, he sought out a Zen master in a temple beyond the village. The old teacher listened without interruption, his face calm, his eyes kind. When the tale was done, the master spoke, his voice steady as stone. Your wife's ghost knows so much truly, a remarkable spirit. But next time she appears, ask her one question. What question? Master, the man pleaded. Take a handful of beans, the master said, and ask her how many you hold. If she answers truly, then you will know it is real. But if not, then you will see. That night, as the ghost returned with her usual storm of accusations, the man steadied his trembling hands, took up a fistful of beans, and spoke as the master had instructed. Beloved, he said, you know all, it seems. Tell me then, how many beans do I hold in this hand? There was a silence, deeper than the night itself. And then the ghost was gone. Never again did she visit him. The Buddha taught, the whole secret of existence is to have no fear. The man's torment had been born not of a ghost's power, but of his own mind. His guilt had conjured her, given her form, given her voice. Every detail she spoke came from his own thoughts, his own hidden fears. The ghost was a mirror, reflecting not her knowledge, but his own self-punishment. Consider, as you rest tonight, what ghosts haunt your mind. Are they voices of the past, old regrets, fears unspoken? And might they, too, dissolve if met with clear seeing, with a question that exposes them as shadows of your own making? The moon rose higher, and the man at last slept soundly, and the beans, scattered upon the floor, bore silent witness to his return to peace. The dawn mist clung to the valley as the monks rose from their sleep, their robes brushing the earth like whispers. Their journey had begun many days before. 10 pilgrims walking together toward the distant holy city, where the teachings of the Buddha were said to shine most brightly. They traveled not for riches or fame, but for the hope of deepening their understanding. Step by step along the sacred path, the road was long and often treacherous, winding through forests where the shadows moved with their own intentions, over hills where the wind sang of impermanence, and across rivers swollen with spring rains. On this day, they came to such a river wide, fierce, its waters roaring between jagged stones. The bridge had long since washed away. There was no choice but to cross together, linked hand in hand, their bodies forming a chain of trust. One by one, they stepped into the icy water, the current tugging at their ropes, the rock slippery beneath their feet. The leader of the pilgrims, a man known for his caution and care, held tightly to the others, guiding them as best he could. The river hissed and frothed around them, but together they reached the far shore. Soaked to the bone, but safe, they collapsed on the grass, breathless with relief. And for a moment all was still, save for the river's endless song. Then the leader stood and called to his companions, "Let us count ourselves to be sure none have been lost." The monks formed a line, weary but obedient, and the leader began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His voice faltered. He counted again, his heart sinking. Still, only 9. His face went pale. "Brothers," he cried, "one of us is gone. We have lost a companion to the river's fury." The monks gasped. Their joy washed away in an instant. Each began to count, hoping to correct the mistake, but each arrived at the same sorrowful conclusion. 9. Only 9. Grief overtook them. They called out into the forest, their voices carried by the wind. They wept for the lost one, though they did not know his name, for in their shock they could not see clearly. The river, indifferent to their sorrow, continued its journey to the sea. A stranger came upon them, drawn by their wailing. A man of simple dress and clear eyes. He listened to their tale and looked upon the group. Then, with gentle humor, he asked, "Good monks, would you count again for me?" The leader, desperate for hope, agreed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His voice broke once more, but the stranger merely smiled. "And who," he asked softly, "counted the counter?" The leader froze, then looked down at his own body as if seeing it for the first time. Realization dawned. The 10th pilgrim had never been missing. He had simply forgotten himself. Laughter bubbled up among the monks, light and freeing as the river's spray. Their grief dissolved like mist in the morning sun. The loss was found not in the forest or the river's depths, but within their own awareness. The Buddha taught, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good." The monk's sorrow was real, but born of a simple error, a forgetting of the self in the search for completeness. How often do we do the same, seeking outside what has never been absent? Consider this tonight as you close your eyes to rest. Are you searching for peace, for wholeness, for something that feels missing? And could it be, like the 10th pilgrim, that what you seek has been with you all along, forgotten, but not gone? The river continues to flow, and the monks continue their journey, but now with lighter hearts, knowing that what they sought was never lost, only waiting to be remembered. In a remote province, far from the courts and cities, a mountain rose jagged against the sky, its cliffs casting long shadows over the villages below. And in those shadows walked a man whose name had once been spoken with honor, but was now a curse upon the wind. Zen Guy, born of the warrior class, had fallen far from his path. His story was known only in fragments, whispers of betrayal, of blood spilled where none should have been, of a fugitive life that left only regret in its wake. It was said that Zengai, once trusted by a great lord, had succumbed to passion and shame, striking down his master in a moment of desperate fear. With blood on his hands and the weight of dishonor on his soul, he fled into the wilderness. For a time, he wandered with a woman who had been the cause of his downfall. But greed and bitterness soon poisoned what had been passion, and at last, Zengai left her behind. Seeking solitude in the barren lands where no one knew his name. It was there, on a narrow mountain pass, that Zengai found his purpose not to erase his crime, for he believed that could not be done, but to offer what service he could in the time that remained to him. The pass was treacherous, a path that claimed many lives each year. Families were torn apart by its dangers. Merchants lost their goods and their lives on its crumbling edge. Zengai resolved to change this with only simple tools and the strength of his hands. He began to carve a tunnel through the mountain's heart. Day after day, year after year, he worked. By day, he begged for food from distant villages. By night, he returned to his labor, chipping away at the stone, driven by a vow known only to himself. Decades passed. His hands became scarred and calloused, his back bent, his hair white. The tunnel grew, foot by foot, an offering of repentance to the world. And then, one day, the pass came to claim him. A young swordsman appeared at the tunnel's mouth. His eyes blazed with the fire of long-nursed vengeance. He had sought Zengai for many years, this man who had killed his father. And now, at last, the moment of reckoning had come. Zengai did not resist. He set down his tools, turned to face the avenger, and bowed. "My life is yours," he said, voice calm as the mountain breeze. "But grant me this, allow me to finish the work. When the tunnel is done, my head is yours." The swordsman, surprised but unmoved, agreed. But as days became weeks, and weeks became months, he watched Zengai labor without rest, without complaint. He watched the old man's hands shape the stone with tireless devotion, and slowly, the fire of vengeance cooled, replaced by something he had not expected: respect and even love. When at last the tunnel was complete and travelers could cross in safety, Zengai turned to the young man. "Now," he said simply, "fulfill your vow." But the swordsman's sword remained in its sheath. Tears filled his eyes. "How can I cut down my teacher?" he asked, his voice breaking like the stone that Zengai had so patiently carved. The Buddha taught, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. Zengai's years of labor did not erase his crime, but they transformed his life into an offering that served not just his own redemption, but the well-being of all who would pass that way. Tonight, as you rest, consider, what tunnels might you carve with your own hands, not to undo the past, but to create good where harm was done? How might your own regrets become the foundation for compassionate action? And can you see, as Zengai did, that the truest atonement is not in seeking forgiveness, but in dedicating yourself to the service of life? The mountain stands, silent witness to all who pass, and the tunnel remains, a testament to a man who turned guilt into gift and vengeance into peace. The spring rains had passed, leaving the land fresh and green, and the villages bustling once more with merchants and farmers tending their daily tasks. In one such village, nestled between forest and field, lived a monk whose name was known across the province Gesson, the artist. His paintings adorned the halls of the wealthy, his brush strokes so delicate that a single line might capture the flutter of a sparrow's wing, or the stillness of a mountain beneath the moon. But though his art was renowned, his reputation was mixed. For Gesson insisted on one thing above all: payment in advance and payment in full. His prices were high, shockingly so, said some, and he would not lift his brush until his terms were met. Many whispered that greed had corrupted the monk's heart, that he loved gold more than the Dharma he had vowed to serve. One evening, a geisha, known for her beauty and cleverness, came to him, requesting a painting to adorn her home. She moved with the grace of falling petals, her voice as soft as the wind through bamboo. Gesson named his price, and the geisha, intrigued, agreed. But she had a plan, as Gesson painted in her home, creating a work of breathtaking beauty. She waited until he had finished, and then, with a laugh, mocked him before her guests. "Look at this monk," she said, voice light but cutting. "All he cares for is money. His art is no better than the cloth I wear beneath my kimono. Here, paint upon it, and see if your work has any more value there." She handed him a silk undergarment, expecting him to refuse or to show shame. But Gesson only asked, "How much will you pay?" She named the price. He painted, and then he departed without another word. Years passed, and Gesson's brushes fell silent. His hands, once so skilled, now tended gardens and helped build shelters. Only then did the truth come to light. The gold he had demanded, the wealth he had gathered, had not lined his pockets. Instead, it had fed the hungry when famine came. It had built a road so pilgrims could travel safely to a distant shrine. It had raised a temple in honor of his own teacher, fulfilling a vow made long ago. The so-called greed of the stingy artist had been a mask, hiding a generosity deeper than most could fathom. The Buddha taught, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. Gesson's work was not for himself, but for all those unseen lives his gold would aid. Consider tonight, as you lay your head to rest, how often do we judge by what we see, not knowing the truth beneath? How often do we mistake the appearance of greed for hidden compassion, or the appearance of pride for secret service? And in your own life, can you act with such purpose that even misunderstanding cannot shake your path? Gesson's paintings may fade with time, but the road he built still bears the footsteps of those who walk safely because he labored for them. His true art was not in ink or silk, but in the quiet, unseen kindness that needs no praise. High in the northern mountains, where snow blanketed the land half the year, stood a remote temple known for its austere beauty and ancient customs. The monks who lived there kept a tradition as old as the temple itself. Any wandering monk who sought shelter must first engage in a debate. Only those who could demonstrate true understanding of the Dharma would be welcomed within. On a winter's night, as the wind howled through the pines, a traveling monk arrived. Weary from his journey, he knocked at the temple gate, bowed low, and requested hospitality. The elder monk, wise and learned, was too tired from his daily study to engage in debate, and so he turned to his younger brother, a monk simple of mind, who had lost one eye in an accident years before. "Brother, The elder said, "Go meet the traveler. Debate with him silently, in gestures only. Let wisdom speak through silence." The younger monk, anxious but obedient, went to the shrine room where the traveler waited. They sat facing each other, candles flickering between them, casting long shadows on the floor. The visitor, eager to demonstrate his understanding, began the silent dialogue. He raised one finger, indicating the One, the Buddha, the source of all. The younger monk thought for a moment, then held up two fingers, suggesting Buddha and the Dharma, the teaching that flows from enlightenment. The traveler nodded, pleased, then held up three fingers, completing the Trinity Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the community of seekers. But at this, the younger monk's face flushed with anger. He clenched his fist and shook it in the visitor's face. The traveler, startled by this unexpected response, rose hastily, bowed, and departed into the snowy night. He found the elder monk and bowed again. "Your young brother is a man of profound understanding. His gestures were subtle, his meaning clear. I dared not stay. So thoroughly was I defeated in debate." Curious, the elder asked what had passed between them. "I began with one finger, for Buddha," the traveler said. "Your brother replied with two. Adding the Dharma, I raised three, to include the Sangha." Then he showed his clenched fist, signifying that all three arise from one source, indivisible. Such depth of wisdom I could only withdraw in humility. But no sooner had the traveler gone than the younger monk burst into the room, angry and indignant. "Where is that fellow?" he demanded. "I will not stand for such rudeness. Tell me what happened." The elder monk said gently, "That scoundrel mocked me the moment he saw me." The younger monk exclaimed. He held up one finger, "Making fun of my one eye. I tried to be polite, so I held up two fingers, congratulating him on having both eyes. But then he raised three fingers, as if to say, between us, we have only three eyes altogether. That was too much." I shook my fist at him, ready to teach him a lesson. The Buddha taught, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts." The two monks had shared the same gestures, but lived in different worlds. One saw a profound exchange of wisdom, the other a deep insult. The meaning arose not from the gestures themselves, but from the mind that received them. Consider tonight, how often do we interpret the actions of others through the lens of our own fears, our own stories? How often do we see insult where none was meant, or miss wisdom offered in plain sight? And can we, like the elder monk, step back and smile at the comedy of our misunderstandings? The snow continued to fall, covering the traveler's path, softening the world's edges, reminding all who watched that what we see is shaped always by how we look. In a quiet temple nestled at the edge of a forest, where the evening bells mark the end of the day's meditations, lived Master Sengai, a teacher known for his kindness and his subtle wisdom. The temple was home to many young monks, each striving to walk the path of the Dharma, though some found the way more difficult than others. Among them was a student whose heart was restless. By day, he performed his duties faithfully, chanting with the community, tending the gardens, joining in the work and study that formed the rhythm of monastic life. But as night fell, and the temple lay silent beneath the stars, a different longing stirred within him. He felt trapped by the walls that once seemed to shelter him, drawn by the lights and laughter of the village beyond. And so, when the temple had settled into sleep, the young monk would quietly place a stool by the wall, climb over, and slip away into the night. There he found brief escape among the pleasures of the town, the warm lights, the music, the voices that spoke of other lives. Before dawn, he would return, setting the stool back in its place, believing his secret safe. But Master Sengai, whose heart was open like the sky, noticed all things. One night, sensing the absence of his student, he rose from his meditation and followed the path to the wall. There he found the stool waiting by the stones, and without a word, he removed it. Then he stood in its place, still and silent beneath the moon. Hours passed, and the night deepened. At last, the young monk returned, his mind clouded with weariness and regret. In the darkness, he did not see what had changed. Reaching out, he placed his foot upon what he thought was the familiar stool and stepped down onto the shoulders of his master. The impact startled him. He froze, realizing what he had done, his heart pounding with shame. Surely now he would be rebuked, cast out, exposed before the community. But Sengai simply rose, brushed the dust from his robes, and spoke softly. "It is cold tonight. Take care not to catch a chill." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving the young monk standing alone, tears streaming down his face. His heart pierced not by scorn, but by love. From that night on, the monk never again sought escape beyond the temple walls. The need to flee, to deceive, dissolved beneath the warmth of unconditional compassion. The master's silent gift had taught what no words could convey, that true transformation comes not through punishment, but through the gentle light of understanding. The Buddha taught, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. Sengai's response embodied this law, offering not correction through force, but healing through care. Consider, as you prepare for rest, where in your own life might you offer such compassion to yourself, to others? Where might a gentle word, a silent act of kindness, open the door to change more surely than any reprimand? The night deepened. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, and within the temple walls, the young monk slept soundly, no longer needing to climb beyond them in search of what he had already found. In a quiet room, its paper screens illuminated by the soft glow of a lantern, a man lay upon his bed, his breath shallow, his body frail. The cherry trees outside the temple were in bloom, their petals drifting like snow upon the spring breeze. But the man could no longer see them, for his eyes had turned inward, facing the final journey from which no traveler returns. This was a devoted monk, a student of Master Basui. For many years, he had walked the path of Zen with sincerity, attending each teaching, practicing each meditation, striving always to pierce the veil of illusion. And now, as the body failed him, as the boundary between life and death drew near, he found himself afraid, not of the pain or even of dying, but of what lay beyond, the moment when breath would cease, word of his distress reached Master Basui, and the teacher, knowing that the time was short, took brush and ink and composed a letter. His words, written with care and clarity, carried the weight of a lifetime's wisdom. My dear friend, the letter began. I hear that you are troubled as you approach the great transition. I write to remind you of what you have always known, though perhaps you have forgotten it in this moment of fear. Basui's hand moved steadily across the page, forming each character with the same mindful attention he gave to his breath. The essence of your mind, he continued, is not born and will not die. It is not an existence that can perish, nor is it emptiness that is mere void. It has no color, no form. It enjoys no pleasures, suffers no pains. It simply is. The master knew that his students' thoughts, weakened by illness, might cling to hopes or recoil in terror, and so he pointed directly to what lies beyond both birth and death. You may not know exactly who is suffering, Basui wrote, but I ask you, what is the essence of this mind? Think only of this, and you will need no more. And at last, as the ink dried and the night deepened, he added, covet nothing. Your end, which is endless, is like a snowflake dissolving into the pure air. When the letter reached the dying monk, those at his side saw a change come over him. His breath grew easier, his face softened. The fear that had haunted him fell away like a heavy cloak. In his final hours, he turned his attention inward, seeking not escape, but recognition. And when the end came, it came as gently as dawn light upon the mountains. He passed as a snowflake dissolves into sky without struggle, without regret. The Buddha taught, meditation on death is supreme, for when we face death, we see most clearly what cannot die. Basui's letter offered no false comfort, no promises of paradise or escape. It pointed instead to the truth that had been present all along, that what we truly are does not arise with birth, nor cease with death. Consider tonight, as you lie quietly with your own breath. Can you touch this awareness within yourself, the still, silent witness that has never changed, even as the body has aged, even as thoughts and feelings have come and gone? Can you sense the snowflake of the self returning to the air that has always held it? Outside, the cherry petals continued to fall, each one a reminder of beauty, of impermanence, of the great return to what always was. Spring's warmth spread across the land, awakening fields and forests, calling forth the scent of plum blossoms and new grass. In a humble temple near Kyoto, the monk Tetsugen sat beneath a blossoming tree, contemplating a dream that had lived in his heart for many years, a dream to bring the words of the Buddha to his people in a form they could read, understand, and cherish. In Tetsugen's time, the sacred sutras existed only in Chinese characters, unreadable to most Japanese. He envisioned printing them in his people's language, 7,000 copies carved onto wooden blocks, so that the Dharma could take root in every home, every village. The task was vast, requiring resources beyond his own means, but his resolve was steady as a mountain. For 10 long years, Tetsugen traveled the countryside, begging not for himself, but for this great purpose. The rich gave gold, The poor offered coins. He accepted both with equal gratitude, bowing as deeply for the smallest gift as for the largest. At last, after a decade of patient effort, he had gathered enough. But just as the work was to begin, disaster struck. Rain swelled the Ikkyu River beyond its banks, flooding fields, sweeping away homes, leaving thousands hungry and homeless. Without hesitation, Tetsugen used the funds he had so carefully collected to buy rice, to rebuild houses, to save lives. When the flood subsided, he began again. Year after year, he walked the same paths, met the same villagers, wore his sandals thin upon the roads of compassion. Slowly, he gathered what he needed once more, and then a plague swept through the land, leaving sorrow in its wake. Again, Tetsugen gave all he had, this time for medicine, for care of the sick, for the comfort of the dying. A third time, he began, and this time, no disaster diverted him. 20 years after his dream was born, the sutras were finally printed. The wooden blocks still rest in a Kyoto temple, a monument to devotion and perseverance. Yet among the people, it was said, Tetsugen made 3 sets of sutras. The first fed the hungry, the second healed the sick, and only the third was carved in wood. The Buddha taught, if you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your path. Tetsugen's greatest work was not the sutras on paper, but the invisible sutras written in rice and medicine, in kindness and sacrifice. As you rest tonight, consider, what are the sutras of your own life? Are they the goals you strive to achieve, or the unseen acts of care that ripple outward, touching lives in ways you may never know? Can you hold your ambitions lightly, ready to lay them down when compassion calls? Outside, the plum blossoms fall, their beauty fleeting, their fragrance lingering on the night air, a reminder that the most precious offerings leave no mark but the sweetness they share. The sun rose slowly over the terraced hills, casting soft light upon the monastery gardens where Master Hakuin worked with quiet devotion. His hands, though aged and worn, moved with steady purpose as he swept the paths, pruned the trees, and tended the small fields that fed the community. At 80 years of age, his body had grown frail, but his spirit remained as vibrant as spring's first bloom. Day after day, the younger monks watched in wonder as their master labored beside them. He refused to rest, to sit idle, and allow others to shoulder the work. His example inspired, but it also concerned them. They whispered among themselves, questioning whether it was right for their revered teacher to strain his aging body with such demanding tasks. At last, moved by compassion, they decided to intervene. One evening, as Hakuin slept, they gathered his tools, the rake, the hoe, the pruning shears, and hid them away, believing they were sparing him hardship, offering him the dignity of well-earned rest. But the next morning, when the master rose and found no tools waiting by the garden wall, he did not rebuke his students or ask where they had gone. Instead, he returned to his quarters, and when the time for meals arrived, he did not appear. A day passed, then 2, then 3. He took no food, nor drink, nor comfort. though his strength surely waned. The monks grew alarmed. They had wished only to ease his burden, not to harm him. At last, humbled and contrite, they returned his tools to their rightful place. When Hayakujo emerged the next morning and saw the tools waiting, he said nothing of the days past. He took up his rake and with the same quiet joy resumed his work. That evening, he joined the monks at their meal as if no interruption had occurred, and later, gathered beneath the moonlight, he spoke softly so all might hear. No work, no food. This is the law not of men, but of nature itself. The bird that does not seek seeds will go hungry. The tree that does not stretch its roots will wither. We are no different. We earn our sustenance not once, but each day anew. Through service to life, the Buddha taught, heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. Hayakujo's diligence was not a matter of pride or stubbornness. It was the expression of his living understanding, the embodiment of a truth beyond words. As you prepare to rest tonight, reflect. In what ways do you contribute to the world around you? Not only through grand deeds, but through simple acts of care, of attention, of presence. And can you see, as Hayakujo did, that work done with mindfulness is not a burden, but a blessing? The garden waits, the earth ready to receive each footstep, each stroke of the rake, each offering of the hands, and the heart, too, is a garden tended through the work of kindness and the labor of love. Morning light filtered through the paper walls of the tea room, casting soft patterns upon the polished wood floor. The stillness was complete, broken only by the gentle sound of a brush sweeping dust from a low shelf. Young Ikkyu worked carefully, aware that in this room every object was more than an object. Each held a story, a lineage, a spirit. Among them was the master's most prized possession, a delicate teacup of ancient porcelain, its surface etched with the subtle touch of a long-dead artisan. As Ikkyu reached to dust beneath it, his elbow grazed the shelf. Time seemed to pause. The cup teetered, then fell, its descent as graceful as the arc of a falling petal. It struck the floor with a soft crack and shattered. The boy froze, heart pounding. The master's treasured cup gone, broken beyond repair. He heard the master's footsteps approaching, the soft scrape of sandals on wood. Panic rose within him. There was no time to hide the fragments, no way to undo what was done. And so, in that moment, Ikkyu turned to the one thing his training had taught him, truth. He gathered the pieces, hid them behind his back, and as the master entered, he looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Master," he said, voice steady despite the storm within. "Why must people die?" The master paused, surprised by the question. He looked upon his student kindly. "It is the way of all things," he said. "All that is born must die. Everything that exists has its time. And when that time is complete, it returns to the great emptiness." Ikkyu nodded solemnly and with a slow breath brought forth the broken cup. "It was time for your cup to die," he said quietly. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the master, seeing the truth in his student's words, began to laugh, a deep, joyful sound that echoed through the house, dissolving the weight of loss. The cup was gone, yes, but in its breaking, a lesson more precious than porcelain had been offered. The Buddha taught all conditioned things are impermanent. When you see this with wisdom, you are above sorrow. Ikkyu's quick thinking was not trickery, it was insight, a reminder that attachment turns natural endings into suffering, while acceptance transforms loss into understanding. Consider tonight, as you prepare for sleep, what cups are you holding tightly? What do you fear to lose, forgetting that all things in their time must pass? And can you, like Ikkyu, meet the breaking of what is precious with grace, seeing not the tragedy, but the truth? The teacup was no less beautiful for having broken. Its gift was complete. And in the quiet room, the master and the boy sat together, the space between them filled not with regret, but with the gentle peace of understanding. In the quiet heart of a mountain monastery, where the pines whispered ancient secrets and the bell's chime marked the turning of the day, Master Gesson gathered his disciples. His eyes, sharp and bright despite his years, swept over the young faces before him. Some were eager, some weary, all seeking the path to wisdom. With a slight smile, he spoke. There are 3 kinds of disciples who come to study the way. The first are those who truly understand and can impart Zen to others. The second are those who maintain the temple and tend the shrines useful and diligent, though they may not yet grasp the deepest truths. And the third, he paused, his voice soft but pointed, are like rice bags or clothes hangers, merely taking up space, consuming without offering, present in body but absent in spirit. The word stirred laughter and unease in equal measure. Each monk wondered silently where he stood in this quiet hierarchy. Among them was Gesson, a disciple who had endured much under the harsh guidance of Master Teisui, where others saw cruelty in Teisui's rigorous demands. Gesson saw opportunity. He welcomed the challenges, the impossible tasks, the sharp corrections, while some students sought teachers who offered comfort and praise. Gesson remained with a master who gave him neither, but instead pressed him always toward deeper awakening. A poor disciple, Gesson would later say, utilizes a teacher's influence, seeking status by association. A fair disciple admires a teacher's kindness, finding solace in gentle words. But a good disciple grows strong under a teacher's discipline, seeing in every hardship a chance to polish the mirror of the mind. When Teisui lay dying, Gesson attended him faithfully. The master, though his body weakened, remained sharp in mind. When the temple is rebuilt, Teisui asked, "What will you do?" Gesson replied with quiet conviction, "When your sickness is over, we will ask you to speak there, and if I do not recover," Teisui pressed, "then we will find another." Gesson answered, "And if no one suitable is found, then don't ask such foolish questions. Just go to sleep." Teisui smiled, content. His student had learned not only the form of Zen, but its heart, to meet each moment as it is, without clinging to what might be. The Buddha taught, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Gesson's mind had been forged in the fire of discipline, shaped by hardship into something steady and clear. His strength was not in his knowledge of the teachings, but in his ability to live them calm in the face of uncertainty, free of the need to control what lay beyond his reach. As you rest tonight, consider, where do you seek comfort when the path grows difficult? Can you, like Gesson, welcome challenge as the very ground of growth? Can you meet life's demands not with resistance, but with a heart willing to learn? And so the mountain monastery stood, its walls rebuilt, its halls echoing not only with chants and bells, but with the quiet strength of those who chose the hard road, the road that led not away from difficulty, but through it toward the freedom on the other side. As our journey together comes to a close, let us pause and reflect upon the path we have walked, through stories of warriors and monks, of broken cups and invisible sutras, of ghosts and bamboo pipes. We have explored the many phases of awakening. Each tale, in its own way, has pointed to the truth that what we seek is never far, never lost, never absent. It waits quietly beneath the noise of our striving. In the stillness of our own awareness, may these teachings stay with you not as ideas to remember, but as seeds planted in the soil of your daily life. May they bloom in moments of challenge, offering shade and comfort. May they remind you that the peace you long for is always here, in this breath, in this moment. Share your thoughts, your reflections, your stories of the path, and let others draw courage from your words. And if this journey has brought you even a small taste of rest, of clarity, of peace, I invite you to subscribe, to stay with us as we continue to explore the timeless wisdom that guides us home. Good night. May you sleep in the embrace of this knowing. You are already whole, already free, already home,